we might ask ourselves if what works for one client can be replicated and copied over to another. And here I wanted to kind of share two A/B tests by Drip Agency by Samuel Hess and Pascal Dietz from Germany that essentially they were attempting this replication for two of their clients for Snocks, between Snocks and Lotuscrafts. So both kind of e-commerce sites or product-specific sites that make their own, also in this case, socks and shorts and things like that, and Lotuscrafts, yoga mats and accessories and such. And what was happening here was, so they detected a positive signal on product pages, optimizing for sales for Snocks, and they discovered this pattern that we called zigzag layout, essentially taking product descriptions that are kind of all uniform and boring and one big chunk of text, and translating them into breaking them up more using images and then using kind of highlights or subtitles. In this case, there's a mention of team and fit and young startup and packaging and free returns and some sort of guarantees, right? So when they ran this initially, when they ran this test, they detected a significant increase to adds to cart and a spillover and almost significant increase in sales, right? So that was good enough to make a decision and roll that out. Couple weeks or months down the road, when they were also working with a completely separate client with Lotuscraft, when they were optimizing the product page, similar thing fell in their attention here. Boring or chunky kind of big product descriptions that kind of all uniform, slightly more broken up here. I guess, these are little subtitles, right? So they're, which kind of raises the question, like there's never a complete one-to-one copy. There is things are similar. They're not exactly fully the same, but there's similarities, right? But nevertheless, this became an opportunity, and the inspiration from the Snocks kind of experiment drove the design of this variation here. Also slightly different. So notice that the actual text was kept the same, and this was on a kind of an injection of some of the kind of copy was in a way reused. Something about the surface here, something about width and being kind of slip resistant and friendly to touch or the skin, and again, different kind of product qualities were reused from this kind of copy and then reinforced and broken down into being more visible here. And when they tested this, I can share some of the kind of outcomes. So both experiments had a positive and significant increase to adds to cart, so that kind of initial step. And further down the road, in terms of sales, actual transaction, people kind of finishing the funnel, going through this kind of steps and paying for the particular product. Both tests also had an increase to sales, a positive increase. In this case, in the Snocks example, was almost significant. In the Lotuscraft example, it wasn't significant. It was kind of, here I kind of reported p-value. Nevertheless, both metrics, the first two metrics were replicated very, very similar. I think this was like 5%. This was close to like less than 6% increase in adds to cart. So given that both examples were, I believe, implemented, and the decision was to kind of roll this out, I find this interesting. I find this interesting because, normally when we have such results, when there's something kind of like insignificant and sales, and we're kind of on the fence about deciding on some sort of kind of more fuzzy outcome, I feel that when we have other prior data, historical data, and we have other similar experiments that others have run, there's a tendency, or there's a it's easier to decide when we factor both kind of similar experiments, that decision's a little bit easier to to kind of roll something out like this, when we have historical data. So that's why we publish this this test under a particular pattern, and here we have again these two tests. So thanks, Samuel and Pascal here for sharing this. But we actually we'll be adding more tests like this that might match this pattern, and we'll compare these things, and hopefully over time we can get a more accurate and stronger result from doing some of these kind of things here. So but again, overall, I find this super interesting that like basically what worked for one company overall was more or less replicated on another. And so again, thanks guys for sharing this, and again, hopefully you can find some inspiration on this, and thanks for watching.